fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice.
Greetings world. We are Anon DK. Welcome back as we continue exposing the genealogy and history of the elite who control and rule our world today. We have come to a new millennium and Newfoundland was discovered by Dan tribe descendant Leif Erikson and his Vikings from Norway. Once again the Franks, who were the Salics, who were the Pannonians, who were the Uftalis, now Romans, grew hungry for war. Their typical victims, which are anyone residing in Middle East, especially Syria, were targeted again. In the 600s the Levant, Syrians and Palestinians and some Turks, had taken over the area of Jerusalem. Pope Urban II of the Merovingian bloodline, in 1095 decided they wanted the land themselves. So began the Vatican's crusades to ethnically cleanse and depopulate openly. What they called Holy War. The leaders of the First Crusade were Godfrey Bouillon, Robert Curthose, Huva Mardois, Baldwin Bouillon, Tancred de Hauteville, Raymond Toulouse, Bohemond Taratu, Robert II from Flanders and Stephen from Blois. Peter the Hermit, from the Priory of Sceaux, joined Pope Urban in the Crusades. Both being from the bloodline, bore the dynasty's symbol, a white shield with a red cross with arms of equal lengths with fleur-de-lys on the ends. It is called the Iron Cross. Christopher Columbus emblems held both of these as well. Priory of Sceaux was derived from Defiler of Sceaux, now known as the Order of Sceaux, the Elder of Sceaux and the most venerable order of St. John of Jerusalem. The Priory of Sceaux was formed in 1090 AD. This was just another club like the Jesuits are today. A lot can be learned about this society in their published work, Protocol of the Elders of Sceaux. This secret society still exists today under the same names as well as new ones, Freemason. Priory of Sceaux, first secret society club of the new millennium, that we know of. This is also when the Catholic Church adopted another one of the elite's favorite things, the acronym IRI, which stands for Iustum, Icar, Regs, Impius. The meaning of which is, it is just to exterminate or annihilate impious or heretical, free-thinking, kings, governments, or rulers. This they have carried out to this day, deleting any government that will not go along with their orders. The Church attempted to rid themselves of the Babylon Merovingian bloodline in 666 AD, but the line had simply bought their way back in by 1030 AD. In 1098 the First Crusade was underway. The oldest epic poem in French called the Song of Roland details the events of this best, based on the Roncesvalles massacre. I will sum up the story so you don't lose your mind with curiosity. Roland was a leader of a section of soldiers. At war, he sent his uncle with a message to accept their enemy's peace treaty. The messenger leaves but is convinced he was sent to be killed by the enemy. He goes to them and tells them how they can defeat the retreating army. He tells them to start behind the army, knowing Roland is at the rear, and the enemy goes off and executes the plan. They slaughter everyone. When almost all of Roland's men were dead, he blows his horn so that the emperor and his troops will come and see what happened to his men. Roland is said to have blown so hard that his temples burst. It states, he dies a glorious martyr's death, and saints take his soul straight to paradise. The Emperor Charlemagne found his army dead and caught the traitor uncle. He was tied up and pulled apart by horses, and 30 of his relatives were hung. There is much more detail to the Song of Roland, but that's the general idea. In 1100, Henry I, the son of William the Conqueror, creates the first police system, representatives dedicated to traveling the country and administering justice. Also 2 new orders are created, the Carthusian and the Cistercian. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux is the leader of the Cistercians and establishes 343 monasteries. They pronounce the Virgin Mary as a saint, and for the first time a woman is given central significance in the Christ-believing religion, destroying the belief principles by creating its first idol, a goddess Diana. Again, those who are Catholics, just like all other religions, have simply been deceived like the rest of us. This is not an attack on any religion. These are the facts. Every religion was created from the bloodline who have always controlled the Roman Catholic Church and used it to breed other religions. All religions are false. No rulers. No religion. The Priory, also known as Zionists, Jesuits, created the Knights Templar in 1118 AD to protect the blood, using the Red Cross symbol they still use today. Many at the time, and still today, automatically assume they were talking about protecting Christian, or rather, Yeshua believing, or even Jewish blood. Just as they use the word God and it gets automatically associated with the Creator or Yeshua, our ignorance and laziness has allowed them to fool us even further. The ones who rule us are cultists. Know how the mind of the occult works. They have a Christ too. His name is Lucifer. The most beautiful ever created. The morning star. The master of music. Wisdom must lead who and what we are loyal and faithful to. The way is narrow. Deception is easy. We cannot blame others for our lack of education. Blind faith only allows the elite to slaughter us all. The papacy, entirely run by elite now, begins acting as a court of appeals, making it necessary that popes are trained as legal experts, rather than as monks, in 1122. You will notice they are always lawyers regardless of their station. President, Pope, General, Clerk, Court Jester, always trained as lawyers, but we will get into why this is more in the future. In 1165, Créti de Troyes, a French writer, condenses history into the first romantic story which we now recognize as Arthur, the Sword in the Stone. He also is the first writer to put romantic love in marriage. The concept of chivalry emerges with his writings. Chivalry means horsemanship. They have made everything about them romantic and appealing to hide the truth and get us to openly idolize what they worship. This is what deception is. Seduction. The gold-haired man, or woman, riding on a white horse. The Orion. Lucifer. King Henry II carries the bloodline on through John, then Henry III, and Edward, who married Margaret of France and Eleanor of Castile. His son Edward II couldn't handle the blood mutation and died after only 20 years of being sick and in pain and weak, leaving daughter Elizabeth, who married Fergus, Lord of Galloway, and their lineage continues. In 1182, Giovanni di Pietro di Ibarid was born in Assisi, Italy. The Merovingian son of a rich French silk merchant, he was called Francesco or Francis. He became a troubadour and fought in the Crusades, was imprisoned, acquired a mysterious illness and had an epiphany or vision that he was called by God to save the church. As the story goes, he dedicated himself to the poor, leaving behind all worldly possessions. Though like every other elite we have seen giving up their riches for the poor, he did not give up his father's fortune which he inherited and used as needed. This is the same story we see for most papal elite. They must be seen as coming from nowhere, and having nothing, because only then is the deception complete and the people able to relate and blindly follow. Just like the Francis we see in the Vatican today. The truth is never what they tell you. Francis of Assisi created several groups: the Order of Friars Minor, for poor men, Order of Saint Clare, for poor women, and the Third Order of Saint Francis for anyone else, who was, of course, poor. Economy control. Keep the poor poorer. He gained popularity and traveled to Egypt to convert the Sultan in a supposed attempt to stop the Crusades. Population control. Remember, the Catholic Church swapped out the Christians for Muslims, thereby putting the blame of the genocide on the Sultan and those like him. We see the same with ISIS and the other crusades of today. His orders grew so large he had to return to continue his work in Italy. Focusing on Venice, at the time an openly pagan state, he and the ruler formed a monopoly of trade across the known world, by controlling the very tools of trade, navigation knowledge, maps, charts as well as ships. Venetians and the papacy saw huge profit and knowledge of all manner of technology such as shipbuilding, metals, education and military skills thanks to Francis. They created a trade partnership with England. Venice declared itself a Christian state and conformed to the socialist, fraternal brotherhood, sworn to absolute poverty, obedience and humility as dictated by Francis. The elite have bought Venice. In 1223 Francis created the first nativity scene. If you note, the nativity includes a male, female and baby Aka Trinity Aka bull, cow, and calf Anu, Horus, Osiris and Isis etc. Francis was known for his love of nature, as he believed that nature was all connected and equal to us, the core of paganism. He worshipped the sun and creatures just as all in his bloodline do. After his death in 1226 he was declared a saint. Let's take a moment for the knights. Since the need for citizens to be unarmed is so central to their power, only nobles containing the elite's blood were made into warriors. Just like it has always been. The citizens were kept poor and unskilled, uneducated and unarmed. They had some of the population as cavalry of course, but with no training, so it was pure chaos. We see the Templar Knights, originally called poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, and the Hospitallers, originally sovereign and military order of the Knights Hospitaller of St. John of Jerusalem, who were also the same, just different names and later called the Knights of Malta. Then the Teutonic Knights, again, same thing, different names and symbols, and the Levi Confederation, Levi Order, Knights of the Sword, were formed as the elite knights, SS if you will. Teutonic was originally called the Order of Brothers of the German House of Saint Mary in Jerusalem. We see ridiculously long and involved titles and names still in their societies today. The Red Cross was created at the same time the knights were. They would accompany the Crusaders and give care to those left behind in the slaughter. Coming in the name of peace and help, they would give a softer death to those left injured. Nothing has changed and the Red Cross continues in genocide, depopulation, trafficking and more with the help of Bill Gates. Nothing has changed. After the Fourth Crusade, those in the Knights groups who were Christ followers saw the truth of what they were doing. They knew it was not what they believed in, as it went against loving others to slaughter them for their beliefs. The Crusades almost died out entirely right there. However, the Catholic Church simply called on its Muslim brothers to join. The elite had created that religion generations before when they were Zoroastrians. The Muslim religion already believed in the Holy War and the Crusades were able to progress and carry on for many years, uninterrupted. The Knights of Malta are seen today, known as the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. It is an internationally recognized sovereign body that prints its own postage stamps, flies its own flag and mints its own coins. It represents itself as a charitable organization and works with the UN since 1994, providing hospitals and help to the poor, hungry and with natural disasters. Other branches are called FEMA and Red Cross. The Knights of Malta have recently been taken back over by the Vatican. Rome has regained its legionaries, its crusaders. The Knights, both types, were international, world police. A new world police was implemented in 2015 with no borders and separate laws. They have stations across the world already. During this time the Teutonic Knights were battling in Estonia against Denmark. The Danish king, Valdemar IV, sold the land to the Knights. The Danes had never inhabited the area as they kept to the lands they have currently. The king used the money received for the land to pay off the mortgages left on Danish-inhabited parts of Denmark. The land of Estonia was inhabited only by Aftali's tribe before and after the two tribes split at Troy. The Danes have always stayed very separated and in their own little territory. It was no loss to Valdemar to sell the land that was never considered his. The Knights raided and destroyed and murdered until 1312, when Pope Clement came into office and charged them all, some of whom were burned to death, most locked in jails until dead, and the few remnants dispersed to Scotland where the Knights of Columbus were created. Just another name change, nothing new here, as well as the Freemasons, the Order of St. Francis, and Hellfire Club, and many other societies. In 1219 Pierre d'Aimaz de Chapelle, Bishop of Paris and knight in the Crusades, died in battle. Interesting to note, the methods of torture used by the elite haven't even changed. The Knights used methods such as, victims were stripped naked, chained, and cast into dungeons. Sometimes the accused was tied down, a cloth stuffed in his mouth, water poured into the cloth and caused it to swell. The choice was to confess or drown. Sounds like waterboarding is not new. A more creative option was to place a man into a pit no wider than himself, where he would be left to stand in his glory and starve. The rack was used to dislocate shoulders and hips. Now we simply tie them up with ropes, arms backwards. Subtler methods of interrogation were used as well. Denied sleep and the chance to void bowels or bladder, the accused could be subjected to a constant battery of bewildering questions by an endless string of interrogators, some cruel, some appearing compassionate. These tactics are also used in American-funded, CIA-run boot camps and schools for troubled teens. Rare is the man who could withstand this to the point of death, which would be his only relief. Under such conditions, hundreds and hundreds of Templars confessed to appalling crimes. Still, we find it a surprise the Knights, now known as CIA and FBI, use these methods today and act surprised when they get no truthful answers. Nothing is done to bring justice to the tortured children or adults. Nothing is said when they die from it. People know and simply don't care. Some other groups under total elite control are international money center banks, central banks, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, World Conservation Bank, multinational corporations, United Nations, Bilderbergers, Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, Club of Rome, Aspen Institute, Bohemian Grove, NATO, EEC, CIA, KGB, FBI, British intelligence, mafia and any organized crime, drug cartels, Interpol, Communist Party, the New World Police, Freemason, Skull and Bones, the Oddfellows Club, Ku Klux Klan, Grand Orient Lodge, Grand Alpia Lodge, Knights Templar, Royal Order of the Garter, Priory of Scio, Rosicrucians, World Council of Churches, National Council of Churches, World Parliament of Religions, Vatica, SMOM, New Age cults and other groups, Unity Church, Fundamentalist, Evangelicals, Baha'i, USCO, World Peace Groups, Planetary Congress, World Federalist Association, World Constitution and Parliamentary Associations, Environmental Groups, Lucis Trust, Morn Polaris Society, Jehovah's Witness, Black Panthers and many, many more. One would think they would get bored after centuries. Surely they are tired. If not tired, they must be bored, as these are all different cookies from the same batch. Why can't we all unite and stand up and simply give them a break? 1237 we see the Mongols, led by Bachu, crossing the Urals from Asia into Russia. Prior to the 13th century, Russia is ruled by the remnant Pan-Nonian tribe who found the Khiva state. They took over Kiev and made a new state on the Volga River and ruled there for 200 years. In 1252 the papacy approves the use of torture for religious disobedience, following Innocent III's inquisitions against heresy, which were mainly done to destroy the Waldensian and Albigensian families. And in 1265 Dante Alighieri is born. He writes the Divine Comedy, the greatest literary expression of history. If there is one thing I hope you read when you finish this, it's his comedy. The greatest work, in my own opinion, next to Milton's Paradise Lost and Goethe's Faust. In 1330 John Wycliffe is born and starts a Reformation movement in the Church. We see the first biological warfare population control technique practiced in 1381. This drill was titled the bubonic plague or Black Death, a manufactured disease like Ebola and Zika. Wycliffe dies in 1384, before his death penalty for heresy. He exposed the elite and so he was to be killed. His movement, as it had gained enough notice, was quickly taken over by the Catholic Church and corrupted. Heavy cannons are used in warfare for the first time. The Knights Templar, being from a long line of pirates and mercenaries, had many maps. One of these was their very detailed map of America, a land they would claim in order to create their own government and society from the ground up to bring in the New World Order. They knew that the key to creating the society they wanted was to have a people separated from their motherland. Due to our biosurvival circuit neurotransmitters in our brains, as infants, we imprint an unbreakable bond to our mothers, including our ancestral hometowns. When that bond is broken, we constantly look for it, like an addiction. We must have our fix. We are never at home. With a population like this, coming from different religions and countries and backgrounds, not only does this create the perfect separations and confusions, but also allows for manipulation and division. The government, the politicians, the cops, the money, the drugs and the celebrities becomes the mother. They would use money to control the society. They made money equal to security, and lack of money equal to insecurity. Keep them insecure. We have already discussed how much they love the poor. The poor are easy to control and kill. By recreating infantile separation anxiety in the entire citizenry, you are able to condition and imprint as you wish. This is the reason for so many clubs, religions and gangs in America, and why they are allowed to run rampant, keeping the people constantly divided. Everyone has a neurochemical addiction to money and has also been ostracized from their motherland. Everyone is divided against each other on multiple levels. Though the Knights had this plan and every detail worked out, they missed one thing. They had no funding to back their trip and a bad reputation. So, the Knights waited for a descendant who could be brought into society and not associated with the now tainted reputation of the Knights. Enter Columbus. Christopher Columbus showed up in 1451, veins pumping the Merovingian blood. He grew up in society, and was made known as a great explorer. When he was old enough and had earned his reputation, the knights let him in on their plans. He approached the Queen of Spain looking for funds for his next voyage. Eventually, she gave in and off he went to discover the New World. From the bloodline relatives of the de Medicis and the House of Lorraine, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain and Castile also instigated the Spanish Inquisition from 1478 to 1834, in which people were tortured and burned at the stake for questioning the basis of the religion their various ancestors had followed. Questioning, free thinking, educating, is heresy. They care nothing for you. Queen Isabella is of the Merovingian bloodline. The knights had planned to create the nation. Having seen that it was sparsely inhabited, they could then finally create their one world order in action. Columbus, claiming to find this new land in honor of the Queen, returned a hero while the rest of the family set up the New World. The de Medici family supported Christopher Columbus, Nostradamus, and produced Catherine de Medici, the Queen of France, who died in 1589. During this time, in 1429, Joan of Arc, called the Maid of Lorraine, becomes the new goddess Diana, Libertas, Isis, Mary, Project. She liberates central France and is burned at the stake for the ritual to be completed. She was also killed because she was starting to act on her own and not under the control of the elite. When you live by oath, you give up the right to live and act as you choose. Even letting the fame go to your head is not an acceptable excuse. In 1455 we see Henry VI begins the War of Roses. The Red Rose was Henry's family at Lancaster, and the White Roses, the York family. At the end of the war, the bloodline changed its name to Tudor. In 1482 Ivan III of Moscow and of the Dan bloodline pushes the Mongol Khan of the Merovingian bloodline out of Russia. They do not resist. This is the only enemy they have ever had that they cannot defeat. That is why they constantly war, throwing tantrums like little children. In Spain we see Ferdinand and Isabella annexing Granada and expelling all Jews and pursuing overseas expansion. That doesn't sound like a blueprint for Hitler or Obama at all. As we keep saying, they use the same scripts. The elite are not so creative and have no imagination, so they simply reuse and redo, and there is nothing new. With the Americas gold and silver pouring into Spain, Mexico and Peru added to their territories, and superiority on the battlefield make it the most powerful state in Europe. Next we will get into more detail about the family's inner workings. The elite are tyrants. These two-faced, treacherous, treasonous traitors have twisted the truth and taken your freedom. When will you wake up and say you have had enough? How long will you allow fear to keep you under their control? How many people have written, spoken and tried with everything they had to get you to open your eyes? I hope you wake up by the end of this work. I hope this isn't just a waste of my time. I believe in you. I don't know who you are, but I believe that you can make a difference and change the world. I believe your soul is worth saving. I believe your life is worth living. But until you believe it yourself, the elite will thrive. They have one goal: to take your life and your soul. Deception makes this possible. But for those with eyes to see and ears to hear and wisdom to understand, you will put aside the control of fear and pick up the light of truth. Your destiny awaits. What is your choice? The time to make it is now. Expect it.